Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the EBII Africa Investment Risk and Compliance Summit. This panel is about the role of the African diaspora in boosting investment on the continent. The purpose of this summit is to focus on helping African businesses and governments improve their due diligence in order to attract the right investments from within the African continent and outside the continent as well. This summit is proudly sponsored by Zenith Bank. Just a little bit about myself. I'm Elorm Haligah. I work in the Houses of Parliament and I currently oversee the UK Parliament's trade relationship with other Commonwealth countries, working for the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. But before that, I am a proud member of the African diaspora. And that's why this panel discussion is really, really important to me. We know the huge impact that diaspora engagement has had in different regions across the world. For instance, if you look in Asia, countries like India and China, individuals from the diaspora have had a huge impact on their foreign direct investment and effectively the development of their economies. Now, in countries such as the country I originate from, Ghana, last year was the very well-known Year of Return. Now, this Year of Return was a huge campaign that aimed to engage diasporans from across the world to engage in the continent and as a result boost investment and boost investment and improve the economic outlook. Now, we have seen the impact that has had in Ghana, and many African countries have also said that they would like to follow suit and do similar things. So at the end of this panel, we will be able to understand the main channels through which the diaspora influences economic development in Africa and how their full potential and the full participation can be effectively facilitated. So today I have with me an esteemed panel of guests. Firstly, I would like to introduce Dentaa Amoateng MBE, founder and CEO of the GUBA Enterprise, an award-winning British Ghanaian entrepreneur. Thank you, Dentaa, for joining us. We also have Pumela. Salela, brand South Africa country head. Her role is to market South Africa in the UK and attract foreign and direct investment. Thank you very much, Pumela, for joining us. Okay. We also have Ayo Sotinrin, who is the founder and managing partner at SAO Group, one of Africa's leading social impact investment and advisory firms. And last but by no means least, we have Augustine Agyeman-Duah. Augustine is co-founder and president of the African Professionals Network in Switzerland and lead auditor at the Global Fund, one of the biggest health financing institutions in the world. Thank you very much, panelists, for joining. Without further ado, we'll get into the questions. And so if I could have the questions, please. So we'll start with Pumela. So Pumela, you do an extensive amount of work with the African diaspora. What interventions do you feel that they can make in order to boost investments across the continent?
Thank you very much. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to start by thanking the organizers of this summit, and in particular, Agyeman-Duah, who's the CEO of the Emerging Business Intelligence Innovation, which is the EBII Group, for giving us this opportunity to actually gather around this virtual table and for us to be able to share our thoughts. And to you, Elorm, as our panel moderator, thank you very much. Let me start by saying that one of Africa's greatest leaders, Sekou Touré, once said, each generation must, out of its relative obscurity, discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it. So permit me from the very onset to say that the African diaspora has a mission, and the mission is clear, that is, develop Africa. Because if not you, then who? And if not now, then when? It is up to the African diaspora to fulfill its mission or to betray it. Fortunately, I'm also speaking as an African who's living in the diaspora. Thus, rather than saying, if not you, then who? If not now, then when? Let me say, if not us, then who? If not now, then when? And so to answer your question, in my observation, we have the following types of African diaspora amongst many. One, we have those that have left Africa and they never wish to return. And two, we have those who have left Africa and they wish to return to the continent. And three, we have children who are born in the diaspora. And the children that are born of parents in the diaspora are making their own decisions in terms of whether they want to go back to Africa or not. But I believe that there's a role for each of these categories, and each of them can play a role in terms of boosting investment in Africa. So firstly, how can those who have left Africa and never wish to come back to Africa boost investment within the continent? So we understand that some have left Africa and they are comfortable in the countries that they live in. And so that's fair enough. But there are avenues in which those who have left the continent to still be called for as part of the energy that will be responsible for the freeing of Africa. And this can be done in the following ways. You can do this as African diaspora who do not wish to return to Africa. One, channel your investments to the different funds that are existing and that have been formed to develop the Africa. And these can be country specific, or sometimes they differ according to sector, to the sectors of the economy, like it could be energy, infrastructure, logistics. And this is where you come into Africa purely as an investor, where you are making an investment and you want to get your return on investment. And so I wish to challenge then at the same time that those who do not wish to return to the continent also use their existing positions in the countries abroad. For example, change the notion of corporate social responsibility, usually seen as CSR, to CSI, which is corporate social investment, where you use the positions that you have in the corporates and the multinationals abroad to make sure that corporate social investments are being channeled to social causes and the development of Africa. And so the last suggestion I have for those who do not wish to return, because remember I've categorized this into three. So the last suggestion under those who do not wish to return to Africa is the notion of impact investment itself, whereby you make sure that you are supporting the businesses who are doing business in Africa whilst doing good. So you channel your investment in those businesses which are making a difference in the lives of the downtrodden, in the lives of the disadvantaged. And also then to also recognize that you yourself, as a diaspora that does not want to return to the continent, are really part of the intellectual capital of the continent. And so you can still make your interventions by being part of the thought leadership that will lead to the emancipation of Africa. So secondly then, how can those who have left Africa and wish to return to Africa make their interventions in terms of boosting investment? Now, I'm very fascinated about the innovative ideas that are coming from the African diaspora when they return to Africa, and how they are able to turn these ideas into profit. Let's remember that in business school, they say that they define innovation as either coming up with a new method or a new product or a new idea, or making an improvement in the existing product or service or method. And so I was reading this book, and I'm gonna, let me share the book quickly, how we made it in Africa. And it was compiled by Jaco Maritz. It chronicles the stories of 25 entrepreneurs who have built thriving businesses across the African continent. And I'll quickly share with you those who were based in the diaspora and they went back to Africa to do business. One, Ayo, he lived in the United States and Canada, and then went on to Ethiopia to actually do great things. He became a serial entrepreneur. He actually copied and pasted the business models that have worked elsewhere in the world into the Virgin Territory, which was Ethiopia. And for example, he started Ethiopia's first English radio station, which is Afro FM. And then he also went on later to sell his stakes on Afro FM and form Kana TV, which is the first local TV which is broadcast in the local Amharic language. And then another Ethiopian, for example, Yordan, moved to Washington, D.C. in the United States, where she worked at the World Bank and then went to form an events company. So I'm trying to illustrate that even within the services sector, there are opportunities. So she went on to form an events company called Flawless Events, and is doing very well. Another diasporan, if I may put it that way, Nelly Toikong, went to study abroad and she qualified as a nurse and she went back to Kenya, her home country, and she then formed a beauty product called Pauline Cosmetics and is doing very well and is sitting amongst the global known brands in the beauty sector. Chijioke Dozie, he leveraged his past experience in the diaspora to disrupt the banking industry in Nigeria, and he formed a company together with his brother and a financial services company called OneFi, which provides loans and also pay later mobile applications. So I could go on and share more examples, but time is of essence, and I'm very aware that my time is limited, and I'm trying to pack in as much as I can in the little time that I can. But this just gives you a picture of the opportunities that those who wish to return to the continent can actually harness within the continent. And so the third sector that I've identified of African diaspora is the children that are born in the diaspora. And as I've indicated, that they make their own decisions in terms of whether they want to go back to the land of the birth of their parents. However, what I wish to stress is that you do not become African because you are born in Africa, but you become African because Africa is born in you. So in my reflections, the starting point for children that are born in the diaspora by parents of African descent, my call to action is plow back to Africa. You can use your school break, you can use your university break to plow back into the continent. And at Brand South Africa, we have a program called Play Your Part, which encourages people to use their time, their money, their skills, to use their goods to contribute to a better future for all. And so I remember when I was living in the United States, my friends from Sierra Leone, for example, who were in the diaspora, used to take leave days and then go back to Sierra Leone and teach high school students mathematics. So this is what I mean by saying that you can be born in the diaspora, but still plow back into the continent. And those of you, for example, who have completed your medical degrees, you can use your holidays or your vacation to go and volunteer in hospitals in Africa. Now, speaking to the youth, Africa has by far the youngest population in the world, and 12th of August was International Youth Day. What we saw is that last week, the youth in Africa launched a report that actually makes practical recommendations for the greater inclusion of young people in Africa. They're calling for a greater inclusion of young people in terms of the public service and governance, and they propose 4 interventions, which really are about an intergenerational co-leadership approach and creating an enabling environment for youth to enter the public service and building platforms for youth political voices and contributions, and also to establish accountability mechanisms, to ensure that the reforms that are done within Africa outlive the political will. And so the young people are really capitalizing on the demographic dividend that Africa has to make sure that they work together for the collective good of Africa and to break the cycles of poverty, to break the cycles of conflict, to break the cycles of hunger, and to break the cycles of inequalities that have really plagued the African continent. And so where am I going with this? I'm saying that the African youth in the diaspora has a role to play in terms of shaping the policies and the governance in Africa through such channels. The youth have got Aya Chebi, who's the Africa Youth Special Envoy in the African Union. She's very active in her role, and she's also very active on social media. And so for the youth in the diaspora, if you have a channel through, for example, such representatives of youth, and for example, youth also must also see, the youth in the diaspora must also see themselves as also business people. There is nothing stopping young people in the diaspora to go and do business into Africa. You can never be too young to make money, and age is just a number when it comes to business. And when we say Africa is open for business, it means that Africa is open for business, even for the young people. And I'm going to touch briefly then in terms of allyship, and I'll tell you why. because we have friends of Africa, and let's not exclude them when we talk of boosting investment into Africa. These are people who are not of African descent, but we find them in the diaspora. So I wish to posit that we should not, we should not shut them off. We should ensure that we also allow them to play the meaningful role that they want to play in terms of boosting investment in Africa. But let me hasten to say that I'm talking about true allyship. And because this can be said easily verbally, but I'm talking about, and then you find that people are doing the opposite in terms of their actions. I'm talking about, the true allyship where people are genuinely interested in assisting Africa in its growth and its development. And I want to underline genuinely. And I will not speak on the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement because His Excellency, Mr. Wamkele Mene, touched on that in the opening address earlier this morning of the same conference. So the last segment of my conversation, if you allow me, Program Director, is Agenda 2063. And so here's a question for the African diaspora, for the members of the African diaspora. How many of us know the Africa Union's agenda for 2063? Agenda 2063 for Africa seeks to deliver on 7 aspirations, and each of them has got their own goals. And if they can be achieved, they can move Africa closer to its own vision for the year 2063. And the 7 aspirations reflect Africa's desire for a shared prosperity, for well-being, for unity in Africa, and for integration. And so if it can be realized, it can ensure that Africa has the freedom from fear, from disease and want. And so in conclusion, I would like to encourage the African diaspora to see Africa not for what it is, but for what it could be. Where others see problems and challenges, we need to see opportunities and turn them into solutions. There's a lot of untapped potential in terms of the challenges that are facing the continent. In Africa, you can make a living from your energy, from your intellect and your drive. And so I'm reminded of the African proverb that says, however long the night, the dawn will break. And I wish to say to the African diaspora, wake up, the night is over.
Thank you very much, Pumela, for your contribution there. And I really liked how you categorized the different divisions of African diaspora, and hopefully we'll get some time to unpack that later on in the discussion, because I think that's a very interesting perspective. I'm going to move on to Dentaa, Amoateng MBE now. And the question that I have for you, Dentaa, if you can hear me, is we've obviously had a very interesting year. The past 4 or 5 months has seen an unprecedented pandemic. And a lot of people have obviously outlined the challenges that this pandemic has brought. But I want to pose the question to you: what opportunities does COVID-19 bring to the African diaspora in particular?
Okay, thank you so much for having me on the show today. Good afternoon to everybody that's watching. First of all, I'd just like to say that, Africa is the future. By 2040, Africa will have the larger workforce than China and India. By 2050, half of the world's population will live in Africa. And so there is a huge opportunity. COVID-19, yes, has disrupted a lot of things, but we can still do a lot of skills transfer. What we need in Africa is that we have the people, it's the skills and the knowledge. There's a lot of people that have been to universities, that are out of jobs. And when you take them into those jobs, they haven't had the skills or the experience. And so we need the people in the diaspora to do skills transfer. We need to make sure that what we have learned from outside, we upgrade it and we give it back to our community, which is Ghana. For instance, adding value to our supply chain. So for instance, we know that we do cocoa, okay? Cocoa gets sent out of the country and it's made into chocolates and is sold back to us. So making sure that we have the right technologies to build on, the products, make our products in Ghana. And our gold, we don't have that many refineries. We always send everything out and then it's sold back to us. And so there's so many opportunities. Even if you look at our cassava, Cassava can be turned into so many things, but we only have one ethanol plant. So again, there's starch that can be made out there, cassava can be made into medicine. So many opportunities for us people in the diaspora to add value to products, for the supply chains. There's so many opportunities. So technology is important for us in Africa, and the people in the diaspora. We need a lot of technologies to be given to us and to be able to develop our country. So technology is huge. And when you look at sanitation and healthcare, there's a lot of opportunities. We need, like Pumela said, we have a lot of doctors we have more doctors, African doctors in the diaspora that are working rather than, working back in Africa. So again, we need those skills. There are a lot of doctors that are doing different types of surgeries abroad that we need here on the continent. So I think that these are the things that we need to be making sure that we are passing on in our countries. Skills transfer is important. So I think that those are the key things that we need right now.
Thank you very much, Dentaa. And just a follow-up question. You have done a lot of work with the Ghanaian government that have tried to develop a lot of diaspora-friendly policies to help engage the African diaspora in the economic development. Can you shed some light on some of these initiatives that is encouraging African diasporans to get involved in the development of their countries?
Yeah, I think what is important from the year of return, we did a lot, and look at beyond the return and things that the government wants to do is that, one, even for us to get into the country, so making it easy for us to get visas, so e-visas online, and then when you look at now we have the trade and investment policies with the African Continental Free Trade, which is going to be happening. When you look at things that the diaspora office is trying to do, so looking at citizenship for people to be able to get, especially people, African Americans that are interested in moving back to the continent, so looking at that as well. And again, technologies, when you look at free zone areas for importers, ECOWAS trade liberation policies, they're looking at, taxes not being charged for importers. So there's a lot of policies that are there that can help us diasporans who are trying to move back to the continent. And also when you look at the diaspora office, they are now setting up something called the Skills Development Portal, which has been done by the GIPC and the diaspora office, so that we can get diasporas who are away to put their skills down. So all the skills that are out in the continent and out in the diaspora can put it down so that we know where everybody is, and when we need those skills, it can come back. And also making it easy for us to be able to even sign up our businesses and lands. So lands commission are trying to go online. Hopefully by the end of the year, if you want to buy land in Ghana, you're able to do all of that online, because land issue is one of the biggest things that diasporans face when they're trying to move back home, when they're trying to buy land. So all of these things will help us try and get the diaspora back and make it easy for us to be able to work in Africa. And obviously you've seen that, in Ghana as well, they've done the postal trying to get names of streets and everything. So we've got an app now where you can easily locate, and this will help with posting. We still don't have a proper, robust posting service. And so when all of these things are put in place, it makes it easier for us to work and invest in Africa.
Thank you very much. And it's interesting because obviously we do live in a technological age now, so it's amazing to see how governments are shifting to that and ensuring that we can access things, like you say, online to make things much easier. Thank you very much for your contribution, Dentaa, and hopefully we were able to unpack a little bit more in the Q&A part of this discussion. So I'm going to move on to Augustine now. And the question I have for you, Augustine, is most African governments see the diaspora as simply a source or a resource for remittances. How can these governments engage them in a more meaningful way to provide them with a sustainable competitive advantage in the global battle for talent?
Thank you very much, Elorm, and your team for having me on this insightful program. First of all, I would like to congratulate EBII Group for such a great summit and creating this platform to discuss the African diaspora. To put the discussion in context, I would like to start by defining who the African diaspora is. And as you all know, there are many definitions when it comes to the African diaspora, but I would like to use the definition by the African Union. And the African Union defined the African diaspora as consisting of people of African origin living outside the continent, irrespective of their citizens and nationality, which I think is very important, and who are willing to contribute to the development of the continent and building the African Union. And as we know, according to the IMF, more than 30 million people have immigrated from Africa. And this is in addition to the people of African descent in the Americans and also in the Caribbeans who left Africa in the old ages. Now, as we know, African governments have a great opportunity to leverage the skills, ingenuity, and resources of these people to boost economic growth and prosperity of their respective countries. So the question is, how can they do this? How can African governments take or leverage the opportunities that the diaspora has to offer? And I'll handle it from three main angles. The first one, I want to talk about remittance, which you touched on, and also talk about trade and investment, and I'll include diaspora fund or bonds, and I will talk about skills and technology, which has already been touched on a bit by my colleague Dentaa. And as you know about remittance, we know that more than 50 million or 50 billion are sent to Africa by Africans in the diaspora every year. And it will interest you to know that a large source of this funding means a lot to the African countries. For instance, these remittance form about 30% of the GDP of Lesotho and more than 10% of the GDP of Cape Verde, Senegal, and Togo. And it shows you how important, or the important role that remittance play in reducing poverty and stimulating economic growth in Africa. As a diaspora, and I'm proud to be one, all of us have sent money back home, and we all know that we send these monies for household expenses, including food, education, healthcare, and also for investment purposes, building or buying houses, properties. These are very important, and Africans have achieved a lot of success with remittance. But despite this success and the fact that remittances provide a lifeline to many Africans, there are still some challenges which, Elorm, I believe that if these are addressed, we would be able to even get more than the 50 billion that we are receiving every year. And what are some of these challenges? One of the challenges is the cost of remittance. It is so expensive to remit funds to Africa. On the average, it's about 10% and it's higher than what we see in other developing regions. And so what I would like to urge our African governments, and this is one of the things that I think African governments can do, is to be able to see remittance as essential and make remittance more accessible and affordable by putting in place mechanisms to reduce the cost of remittance. And I believe that if we're able to do this, African governments and African countries will be able to get a lot from remittance, which we even know is even more sustainable and more stable as compared to foreign direct investments. The second point I want to touch on, Elorm, is trade, investment, and also the diaspora fund. And as we all know, Africans in the diaspora are more willing than other investors to take on risk in Africa. And I think that EBII is doing a great work in trying to demystify the perception of risk about Africa. And I would like to thank EBII for that good work that we are doing. And as you can see, because we Africans in the diaspora, we understand the context and we can evaluate investment opportunities and risk, we are more willing to invest in Africa because we understand the context and we understand the risk. That is the first reason why I think that we need to engage African in the diaspora. The second point also is that for every investment, one of the key risks is foreign exchange risk or devaluation risk. And this has been the biggest risk for foreign investors. And as you can see, Africans in the diaspora, this will not be a big risk for us. Why? Because that is our home, and we may have better use, or we may have other use for the local currency. We may not need to translate the money back to the foreign currency. We may use it in our countries, which also even encourages Africans in the diaspora to be able to invest in Africa. The establishment of trade councils like in Nigeria, and also the African investment promotion agencies in many African countries, has really helped to provide information and also opportunities to Africans in the diaspora. One of the things I would like to highlight is that, and these agencies are doing a fantastic job, but what we have seen is that most often the investment summits are organized meeting with investors in the West. This is very good, and we have achieved more progress, much progress in that. I think that African governments and these investment agencies also need to begin to look inside and see the potential of the African investor, the African diaspora investor, in investing in Africa because of some of the advantages that I've already highlighted as I started speaking. Another point that I think that has also really helped in terms of trying to help African in the diaspora to invest or to come back to Africa is the year of return, and also now the beyond return that was started by Ghana, and also the gates of return, which has been started by Benin, and other diaspora programs that other African countries are doing to encourage African in the diaspora to come back home. And one initiative that my colleague Dentaa also highlighted, which I want to mention again because I think it would be very good if African governments can take advantage of that, is giving citizenship of people of African descent who want to come back home, so that they can feel at home when they are with us. Another point that Elorm I would like to highlight as part of the investment is the diaspora fund. And IMF, a study by IMF actually showed that Africans in the diaspora save 53 billion annually. And you can imagine these 53 billion are mostly held in low yielding bank accounts all over the world. And you can imagine if African governments can take advantage of this and come up with a diaspora fund where these people can receive interest of between 4 to 5 or 6%, it will be an incentive for these African diaspora to take the money from the low yielding bank accounts to invest in Africa. We have seen that African governments have tried to also establish the diaspora fund. Ethiopia has done that. A lot of other countries have done that. Some of them were undersubscribed. Why was that? It was because of some of the risk that was associated with those funds. Now, how do we mitigate these risks? And this is where I would urge and I would encourage the multinational development banks, like our own African Development Bank, if they can partially guarantee some of these bonds or some of these diaspora bonds to enhance the credibility of these bonds, it will really help to attract a lot of investments in these bonds. And I also want to urge and encourage African governments who has large diaspora community to consider the diaspora fund. And we have a lot of African Development Bank and other institutions are there to help us to be able to shape and negotiate and shape or structure these funds to make sure that we achieve the best out of it. Elorm, my last point that I want to highlight is the skills and technology. And as you can see, this is critical. This is very important. The Chinese, they have done that. And I think that Africans, we can also do that. And we have also started doing it, which is very, very good. The diasporas here, and as we know ourselves, there are a lot of them here, they have great talent, they have energy, they have skills, they have the technological know-how. And this we can do through the professional associations that we have all over, and also through temporary assignment. Those of us in the diaspora, if we get opportunities in our management positions, if there are opportunities to take short-term assignments in Africa, let's do it. Let's go, let's share the knowledge. Let's continue to create the platform like what EBII is doing to share knowledge and experience. And another point also that I think African diaspora can help to do is to shape the foreign policies of our governments. Why am I saying that? Those of us in the diaspora, some of the people in the diaspora understand the dynamics because of the connections they have And because of that, they would understand and they will be able to bring to the table some insights that will help African governments in shaping their foreign, their foreign policies. And this will be very important for African governments to be able to take advantage of opportunities that the diaspora has to offer. And so I would like to encourage, and I would like to urge, and I would like to recommend to our African governments to develop legislations and develop diaspora engagement strategies. We need to strategize. We need to look into how can we engage meaningfully with these diasporans. And when we do that, when we are developing these policies, let's involve the diaspora. Let's involve the diaspora so that they can also share their concerns. They can share some of the areas that they think the governments can tap into. And I also want to encourage governments and also the African Union to set up a database of Africans in the diaspora. We are all scattered, but we may not know where all of us are. We may not know the skill set, like Dentaa said, the skill set of the diaspora. If we have a database like that, it helps us to be able to know who is where and who can do what, which will help us to be able to support Mama Africa. Thank you very much, Elorm. That is what I want to say.
Thank you very much for that, Augustine. What I found really interesting about that was the figure, the 53 billion that you say that Africans save on an annual basis. That is absolutely phenomenal, and you can only just begin to imagine what is possible if we put that to use. And like you say, there was interest on top of it and so on and so forth. That's really interesting. Thank you for that. I'm going to move on to Ayo now. Thank you very much, Ayo, for your patience. So my question for you is, what kind of support to African diaspora investors is required post COVID-19 for their businesses to thrive and benefit the continent?
Thank you very much, Adam. First of all, let me start by saying good day to all the excellencies here, our amiable audience, our brothers and sisters in Africa, living in Africa, and of African descent living in diaspora. I also want to thank Agyeman-Duah, the founder and CEO of EBI Group, for the opportunity. To me, I consider it a rare privilege to speak on such important topic and also to such important audience. I would say that you are the most important audience because you've taken time to sort of listen to us speak about Africa, and it's because you're interested in Africa and you want to do right by Africa. Either you're African or you're a foreigner living all around the world. We're all brothers and we want the best for the continent. So we're in very interesting times, I must say, and there is volatility in the global environment, as you all know, due to the pandemic, COVID-19. This is what everyone is talking about now. This is what is the reality we're faced with. It's taking a heavy toll on human life and placing excessive pressure on not just our infrastructure, but typically health system is having negative impacts on well, I call it Africa, not sub-Saharan Africa, as our Excellency said earlier, from the African Union. And coupled with that, in East Africa, they're even faced by, another massive issue, which is the Locust Issue. And it's ravaged loads of farms, it's cost billions upon billions of dollars of damage. Just to put things into context, you have economic and social impact costing us between 37 to 79 billion across the continent. Just in 2020, I'm saying economy that's been developed over, many, many years. Africa has been on consistent growth for the last 10 years. I think that the fastest growing continent. So you're talking about over $79 billion worth of, damage caused by this pandemic. It started off as an epidemic. It became a pandemic all over the world. Now it's endemic in our society, whether we like it or not. So this challenge has sort of contracted, our growth rate from 2.4% in 2019 as recorded to minus 2.1%, and minus 5.1% recently in 2020. It sparked the biggest recession that we've experienced in 25 years in Africa. However, we should look back inwards, not just as Africans living in Africa who are doing business in Africa, but as diasporans as well, because we always say African diasporans You are the ones we've been waiting for. We can't do it by ourselves. It is the motherland for you. It is the country you came from. So why don't you care for it? Why don't you try as much as possible to give back? Now, in saying all this, we are saying that, is it possible we sort of work together as a collective to change the narrative in Africa? Is it possible to tap all the resources Africa has that's not been tapped, you know, in the last few decades? And my challenge is a country like DRC, for example, in the Congo, we say it's a big continent that has over 80% of the mineral resources in Africa, in the world actually, and, you know, north of $14 trillion. That is what DRC mineral resources are valued at. And you don't really find many Africans who are, you know, captains of industries and, you know, diamond sector, cobalt, name it, you know, things that are very precious to us. We'll use mobile phones. The most important component in the mobile phone is actually from DRC, is mined from only that country. So we talk about all this, but how are we sort of getting involved? How are we, you know, are we going to sort of help out to develop these sectors, to regulate these sectors, to sort of put together, you know, a typical mechanism like due diligence for, you know, prepare African businesses to sort of partner with, you know, foreign businesses. Having said all this, the most important thing for us is to realize that all this I've talked about, all the 14 trillion, all the oil in Nigeria, you know, in Angola, it's not the greatest resource we have. We were disillusioned to believe that's all we have in Africa. The biggest and the greatest resource we have in Africa is actually human capital. Without that, we're nothing. So you talk about the biggest corporations in the world right now, typical Facebook, you know, Amazon. These are digital run businesses developed with human capital. This is not your typical Exxon. You know, we're exploring for oil. It's not Shell. It's not BP. Now, for us, why don't we harness it? Why are we too afraid of our own kind? We're all very, you know, quick to say yes. If you try to do business in Africa, you might lose money and all that. Yes, we understand the risks, and we understand that, you know, where there are big risks, there are also big rewards as well. Also, what are we doing to change the perspective, you know, the narrative that your typical, you know, big media sort of portrays? Africa, you know, is corrupt, Africa is backward, it's this, is that. What are we doing as diasporans in Africa to tap, you know, all this resource? So this brings me to my next point. When we talk about, you know, investment in Africa or investing in Africa, you will be surprised to know that in 2019, the biggest investor into Africa was actually the Chinese. Yeah, and that's not necessarily just brownfield projects that we like in the West, because I used to be an African living in diaspora, spent half of my life in the UK, you know, worked, schooled in the UK, worked for the best corporations in the UK. But at some point, I thought it is time to go back home and actually do all I can, because we believe that tiny jobs, you know, makes an ocean. If we work together as a collective, we can actually develop, you know, projects in big parts. So as I was saying to you about the Chinese, you know, investment into Africa, the Chinese have invested $38.4 billion into greenfield projects. I'm talking about new projects into Africa. Don't get me wrong. You're talking about, you know, compliance. You're talking about, you know, country risk and all this. They've managed a way to, you know, right above that and to do business in Africa, right? You're talking about, you know, UAE-based firm that's invested $15 billion in Africa. Actually, the country with somewhat the biggest compliance, the US companies, the Comfort Place, they've invested $10.4 billion in Africa in just 2019. Now, all these corporations that invest in Africa, who are the heads of these corporations? Who are the senior members of the corporation? Are we saying that we do not have Africans living in the diaspora who actually head this corporation or in like top management level, or actually in other corporations who can invest in Africa? So every time I speak to my friends, it sort of beats my imagination when they say, well, so what can we do in Africa? It's very, you know, corrupt, this and that. We came from here. We are from here. We need to do whatever it takes to do the right thing. You go to the regulator, you go to the authorities to, you know, invest the right way. You make sure that, you know, every boats are sort of, you know, screwed properly. Now, having said all this, we now talk about how we sort of, you know, encourage the government, or let me say, hold the government accountable in terms of, you know, ease of doing business. That's very key. You would notice that now the you know, the world of social media, you have every federal government and subnational government who are all, you know, on social media. If you go to Twitter, you'd find, you know, the South African government on Twitter, you'd find the ministries on Twitter. If there are policies that affect us, if there are regulations that affect us from investing in Africa, why don't we, you know, call them into account? Why don't we hold them responsible to say, we want new frameworks, you know, develop, we want better policies in different, you know, sectors, in different fields. I, for one, you know, work in SAO Capital. I've spent the last, you know, 9 years, you know, that I've moved back to Nigeria in trying to support the government in developing critical infrastructure. And I will be honest with you, it hasn't been easy. It's been very tough. However, where there's a will, there's a way. We've been making it work so far, and we're going to continue to make it work. So when we talk about the smaller investments that some of us even wanted to do back then, or some of you want to do, which is, I want to send, you know, money back home to start, you know, a small business, take £20,000 and $30,000. It's still very possible. It's not a case of you've been burnt once, which is you've invested in a business started by your brother or your sister, and you're burnt. There are many startups in Africa now who are doing amazingly well. I mean, talk of startups in Nigeria, you know, likes of Thrive Greek, Farm Crowdy. These are names that you all know very well. In Ghana, a new agriculture startup just started, which is you know, investing on the platform. It's all secured. You invest on the platform. You sort of own a farm as an asset, not just the land. So the land is being probably given by either government to farm, or the private sector company, which is Thrive Greek or this farm in Ghana, acquires the land. They now employ farmers to farm, you know, the land. It could be soybeans or cashew. Now, all this processes is all sort of documented on a platform. You can see, you know, from start to finish. You know, when it's time for harvest, it gets harvested. If it's going to be sent abroad for forex, it gets sent abroad for forex, so you can actually see your investment grow. Some will say they guarantee you 25% return on investment, and they actually do. I mean, Farm Credit, I know quite well, it's been operational for about 2-3 years, and they're doing very well. You've got many of the startups, you know, in Tanzania, in South Africa, name it. Well, one of my panelists, Pumela, runs Brand South Africa, and they've been doing an amazing job for, I mean, close to 8-9 years now that I've known Brand South Africa.
I'm going to have to push you just to wrap up because we're running out of time.
Okay, amidst all these things, they still sort of, you know, try and reduce, you know, all the you know, excesses within the country, and they sort of try to portray, you know, the right image for the country, and they also encourage people to come and invest. So, I mean, I would put the question back at you. Are you sure you really want to invest in Africa, being in diaspora? Thank you.
Thank you very much, and it's I think this panel has been really good in that it's given us different perspectives from different industries, different experiences, and the kind of investment perspective that you've given us is very valuable. So thank you for that. I'll just have a few quick fire questions because we're really pushed for time now. So I'm going to give questions in two. So if Pumela and Dentaa don't mind, I'm going to ask them the same question. And if you can be very, very brief, and then I'll then come to Ayo and Augustine afterwards to answer the same question as well. So firstly, Pumela, and then this will also go to Dentaa as well. Pumela, you touched on the different categories of the African diaspora that you explained it very eloquently. So one of the questions that we've had through is the children that may have been born outside of the continent. How do they engage back home if there is a disconnect and they don't necessarily feel like they belong to their country of origin or to the continent? So if you could be very, very brief on that, that'd be wonderful.
Okay. I think firstly, it is through what I will call immersions. Firstly, it's about going to the continent as a tourist and then immersing yourself into the culture of the people who are in the continent, so that whatever intervention that you make it with respect. You know, you still give respect to those who are in the continent, because sometimes the challenge that the youth in the diaspora face when they go to the African continent is that they come in as if, you know, they are better than those who are in the continent. And so they get then this pushback to say, who do you think you are? But I believe that if you go there with respect and understand the youth that is already in the continent in terms of how they live and immerse yourself into the culture, you have better chances of succeeding. So that's the one. And the second one is that I've indicated that there is an African Union Special Envoy on Youth. She is appointed to be the voice of the youth in Africa. So that's a channel to use, because then whatever proposals a young person in the diaspora has for the African continent, there is a seat at the table through the envoy, Aya Chebi, who has been appointed.
Fantastic. Thank you, Pumela. And I think EBI will definitely circulate the name of the African Youth Diaspora Envoy, because I think that's a very important tool that we have. Dentaa, are you there?
I'm here.
Yeah, okay. So same question to you.
Yeah, so for me, I think what the diaspora, the role that we play, especially in the UK, is that we are engaging the youth in different ways. So we have different events. So you have the Akwaba Party in the Park, which engages the youth. They learn about their culture. They see, you know, they eat the food. And also it's up to us, the parents, to be educating our children on Africa and bringing them back to Africa, on the continent.
Yeah.
And now everything is so digital, everything is online. You can learn everything online. You know, social media is a platform. Google, it gives you everything. So there's nowhere, nobody should have an excuse that they feel a disconnect. There shouldn't be a disconnect, because one, you can learn things online. Two, you can attend events that people are putting on and bringing people from Africa to events. And three, there's nothing stopping you from going back to Africa. You have Indians, the Asians, everybody's going back to Africa. So what is your issue? There shouldn't be any. Get on the flight, go back to the continent, start making friends and start connecting.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that answer there. So I'm going to go on to Augustine and Ayo. If I could just ask you both to be very, very brief. You both touched on investment in Africa, which is what this summit is about. But specifically speaking about the diaspora, I want to pose a hypothetical question to the two of you, if that's okay. So I'm a member of the African diaspora. I have about £3,000 to invest. Which industry would you advise that I put my money in? And I'm going to put that question to Augustine first.
Thank you very much, Elorm, for the question. I think if you have 3,000, what comes to mind, I would say go into farming. If you have the land, it's a very good investment to start with, you know, to start with. And that's, as you know, in Africa, the cost of labor is very low, and especially where you find the farms is normally in the villages, which you can actually make some good gains on labor costs. So I would advise that you go into farming. And if you allow me also to just touch on the debate on African diaspora trying to go back, if African governments, and this is about policy, if they can also help to activate dual citizenship for Africans in the diaspora, I think that will also be a very good way to help people to come back, and also the children who are born here to be able to go back and see themselves as part of the Africa. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Augustine. Thank you very much for that. So Augustine's take on that is agriculture, guys. That's where Augustine believes the money is. On to Ayo. So if you could also answer that same question, if I have £3,000, I'm a member of the African diaspora, where would you advise that I put my money?
Okay, thank you, Elorm. I don't like to be put in the box, but I'll answer your question as best as I can. If I have the opportunity to advise you on £3,000 worth of investment, if I convert it to my currency you're talking about 1.5 million. Yes, I will do agriculture. To be very frank with you, yes, you can buy land for, you know, almost next to nothing, maybe £500 for a small portion, and you can invest it. However, let's be real with ourselves. Who would you give the money to invest for you? Is it your brother that you give money to build a house for you that took off for the money? So, I mean, we all know the people we trust. We all know the people we can work with. If you can find the right person to work with, yes, it's a mustard seed. It will grow. However, if you know you can't take the risk, you don't want to go to the continent and you want to see investment grow. The many online platforms now, I mean, there's so many entrepreneurs who've, you know, digitalized, I mean, investment in agriculture. You can invest your money there and you actually watch your money grow. Another thing you can do is you can encourage the subnational governments or African governments to do more in that space. Just for 1 minute, I'll tell you what we're working with a subnational government in Nigeria. So we went to a government in Nigeria and we said, listen, you have a lot of your, you know, diasporans who are looking to invest.
Just be 20 seconds, please. That would be great. Seconds, yeah. Yeah, thank you.
And you need to create a platform for them to invest. So we got them to commit to $100,000. We got them to, we actually raised capital for them to develop, you know, soya farm cut into 2 hectares each. And that can be sold as an asset to the diaspora. So you can go on the platform. I mean, it is in the works. You can go on the platform, lodge your money there. You'd watch everything grow. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So just a bit of advice from some experts on the continent about where you can invest your money. I want to just thank our sponsors again. Thank you very much, Zenith Bank, for making this possible. And once again, thank you EBII Group for this wonderful forum. Thank you our panelists, Pumela, thank you, Dentaa, thank you, Augustine, and thank you, Ayo. It's been a very stimulating conversation, but let's continue this conversation offline on LinkedIn, any social media platforms that you're on. It's really important for us to ensure that we continue this because this is just the start and there's so much more that can be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.